Hello, and welcome to the Open Alliance for Cloud Adoption Hybrid IT Shared Responsibility webinar. My name is Tom Scott. I'm with the OACA, and with me is Bill Duplay, a long-term member of the OACA, and we're here to talk about these challenges and hopefully bring some insight into the businesses that are in the hybrid IT world. Hybrid IT shared responsibility operating model challenges are one of the important topics we'll be discussing today, as well as the shared security challenges, the hybrid IT service challenges, and we'll also touch on the shared operating model responsibility changes that occur in adopting the hybrid IT model. The hybrid IT model responsibility problem is typically around the introduction to cloud model services into the working models that are shared between the cloud service providers and the consumers. Often these models shift based on the services being consumed, from our infrastructure services to our SaaS services and in between. And as these models shift, so do the responsibilities and the operational models that support them. Services can also have legal and compliant jurisdiction challenges, where companies' requirements and policies will change depending on the deployment models being used and where those deployments occur. If we have implementations that share data across international borders or deployed in countries where the laws and the regulations vary, these models will help to support that and shift with them to support those changes and those legal compliance challenges that we have when we move into the hybrid operating models. Bill, is there something you'd like to add?
Yeah, there's also challenges when there's an outage, who's responsible? How do you, when it goes slow, who's responsible? And so often there's going to be some real miscommunication happens when there is a service breach or a security breach. So that's why we really need to think through who is responsible for the delivery work, the workload management, the DevOps work, the infrastructure work, and the service management work. Now we see that there's really three categories of challenges. We see challenges in the hybrid IT operating model, challenges from a security challenges, and the challenges in IT service challenges. So let's take a look first at hybrid IT shared responsibility challenges in the IT operating model. The IT operating model is really the work of running IT. If we think about it in a hybrid IT operating model, we have five major categories of work that needs to be done. What is the work that's done in delivery of services? What's done in application workload? What's done in service management? What's done in development? And last, and what's in the infrastructure component? If we see what our business units want, they want really one-stop shopping. I don't think business units actually really want to buy from cloud providers. They still want to buy from IT, but they want IT to look like a cloud provider. So we need our IT operating model to do that, to be able to take services from any source, whether it's traditional systems of record, private cloud, public cloud, SaaS provider, and be able to ensure that it meets the demands of the business unit and to be able to manage that supply within it. So the work is the first challenge. We have to transform the work of these five categories or five views of the work to be able to meet this challenge. The second area of challenge is in the area of security. Security has become a major issue. In fact, it's the first and foremost concern of most corporations right now. One global corporation that we work with said that they deal with 23 billion security events monthly and now employ 5,000 security professionals to be able to accomplish that. It is estimated that the cybercrime revenue in 2018 was $1.5 trillion. So this is really, really big business. Now, the main challenge is who is responsible for security when services are delivered from multiple suppliers. Now, let's just take a look at the risk elements within service. We see that there are different risk elements with the infrastructure, with the platforms, and with the software. And it requires us to say who is responsible, first of all, for those making sure that happens. So let's just take a look at data transfer security. Say you have a policy within your corporation that says that all data at rest or in transit or at destination must be encrypted. Well, the question comes down then, who is responsible to make sure that the infrastructure supplier that you are choosing is actually complying to that particular requirement? Now, in most of the cloud providers, we see a really, really strong commitment to security. In fact, it's best to be able to say that you probably can't afford the level of security that a cloud provider is now able to provide. But the issue starts to form between the intersection points. These are the service transfer points between infrastructure to platform, platform to software. This is where we can get opportunities for compromise or compromise security. Now, Tom, you also mentioned that you saw some specific issues in the architecture, in the security layer. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, thank you. I think the real challenge is how our security roles are changed based on the models that we're supporting. We often find that what we were responsible for everything under a single umbrella, a data center, we now have to redefine in the hybrid model because those responsibilities are taken on by the provider, and those that are not, we need to assume. And that will shift based on the models that are implemented. So if I've got an infrastructure platform I'm deploying, I need to understand where those definitive layers change between the roles that traditionally existed and now exist in the hybrid model. Real,
Hey, sorry, can you go to the next slide for me there, Tom? I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah, I think a real way to illustrate that is that because we have these different cloud providers in this layered architecture, we have new risks that are involved. A good example way to think of that is not every cloud provider or every supplier of SaaS particularly has the same disciplines from a security perspective. In fact, their disciplines may not meet the compliant requirements of your particular company. So we see that one of the key things from a security perspective is the need to be able to do assessments of a cloud provider to be able to say, are they meeting the maturity of security that we need within our company? Another key element we find is that the SIEM systems, the security incident and event management systems that we have within our own companies often do not integrate well with cloud providers. And so we have a challenge there to be able to collect data and develop predictive analysis for security threats within our companies and so forth. And so this is another key element with the challenges from a security perspective within it. Let's go on to our next category. This is in the area of the IT service challenges. Now, right now, the service expectation of a service is really 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, availability, 100% reliable, always fast, always secure, measured in your cell phone. And the question is, who is responsible for that? Who is responsible for the performance of a service, the availability of a service, and the reliability of that service within the environment, and so forth. In fact, I think you made an interesting comment, Tom, the other day. You were telling me that slow is the new down. You want to comment on that, how you came up with that
thanks.
one?
It's funny because the speed of business has changed dramatically as we've moved into the hybrid environment, and because of businesses' ability to meet market demand in real time, IT has a bit of a challenge keeping up with that and redefining when the business is being impacted. So when we talk about slow as the new down, when a business has been impacted because of a change or a model shift, and in terms of providing that always on capability, the IT department and security has to be in touch with where those rules are and be able to support them in real time.
You know what I think is intriguing is the definition of what slow is has changed dramatically as well. If we look at it, that it used to be if it was 2 seconds, that was that on a mobile device, that was fast enough. But now, if it's a half a second, that's considered slow. And so the game has changed dramatically. Now, when we take a look at responsibility for this IT service, we see that it becomes, again, a service transfer point where we start to have the opportunity for the challenge. If everything's on premise and the solution stack's managed by IT, they are responsible for performance, availability, reliability, compliance. But as it moves through the stack and we have infrastructure as service, platform as service, software as a service, we start to see that the responsibility starts to split across the environment, but it's still the same problem. And that is at the service transfer point, we have the opportunity for performance, availability, reliability, and security breaches within the company. So let's just talk about how to solve these problems. And we're going to start off by really going through a hybrid shared operating model responsibility changes. Now we go back to our original slide on hybrid IT operating model. We saw that there were 5 categories of work. Now, the Open Alliance for Cloud Adoption has developed a cloud maturity model, which has broken up the work of IT into 31 categories of work. And that 31 categories has been separated or defined in each one of these major views. So these 31 domains define the work, and when we look at the addressing the challenges we talk about, we have to look at what is the work changes in each one of the 31 domains. Now, we're going to take a look at a couple of these viewpoints. We're going to look at delivery and we're going to look at infrastructure. But in the white paper we've written, we've actually described all 5 of these challenges, 5 of these areas in detail, and the changes that are involved. Let's talk about hybrid delivery to start off with. Now, in hybrid delivery, we have to become that one-stop shopping sort. We need to be able to have one service portal that a business demand goes to that is able to get access to services, whether it comes from the traditional systems of record, the private cloud, the public cloud, or the SaaS services. Now, the new functions that we have to deliver inside IT now, new work we have to do, is to address what is changed in the business demand. Now, historically, a business user might develop a spreadsheet, and that would be the full extent of their software development. But that's not the case anymore. The new business innovation enablers are actually exploiting the myriad of new cloud services such as SaaS and functional services, and they're rapidly creating new service offerings. In fact, these citizens integrators are actually creating complete new IT solutions in days. Within the environment. So IT needs to enable this new type of developer, this new person in the field, to be able to support this concept of citizen integration. Now, this really goes against the conventional ITIL control processes, which really focused on really having IT responsible and control for everything. Now we have business units changing software, changing infrastructure providers, changing everything under their own control. So the new hybrid delivery model, though, has to change to address this reality. That enterprise architecture has to also change because it is the engine for the change. It's no longer just a bunch of parts that have predefined outcomes. Now we have the ability to support a business innovator to be able to create whatever they want within their environment. So we see that there's changes to the work, the process and roles, there's changes to the delivery architecture, and there's changes to the service delivery portfolio. So let's just take a look at some of these changes. We'll start off by what are the changes to the roles. First, the first change is that the IT organization must facilitate a service provider role. They have to ensure that the services that they offer to their business units meet the compliance rules, they meet the security rules, the Patriot Act rules, all of the things that make sure that when a business unit selects that service from the portal, they're going to meet all the rules of the company. Secondly, they have to facilitate the service broker role. They have to make sure that they can provide that service and provide the chargeback capabilities necessary to ensure that those services are charged back to the business unit. They have to be able to facilitate a new role called a Business Innovation Advisor. And this is a role where they help the business unit see what's possible with using cloud services or using SaaS services or functions as a service to be able to support that do-it-yourself system citizen integrator with new ideas on how to deliver systems. And last of all, they have to facilitate the enterprise to be able to build out entirely new strategies built on a hybrid IT operating model versus a traditional operating model. So there's a lot of changes that need to be done. The first major change is in the delivery architecture itself. Here we have the citizen integrator, the traditional application developer, and the new cloud native application development groups all coming to the same service portal to be able to access services, whether it's coming from a cloud provider through a security gateway or through a private cloud service or bare metal within the environment, to be able to control access to that service. It facilitates all the approval processes and all of the checks and balances that need to make sure that a service that is chosen does meet the rules of the corporation. So we see that there's another major change, though, is in the things that the architecture group provides, and that's something we call a pattern of use. A pattern of use explains how you build these new services. Next slide there, Tom. A pattern of use describes how will I build a service, such as I want to tie into my back office ERP system and I want to integrate it with a public cloud service. How do I build that service? How does it go together? What is the communication protocols that are used between the user interface, the application tier? How is it instrumented? How is it messaged? How is the analytics done? What kind of database access and so forth? So these patterns of use become very, very important as a new object that's created by the hybrid delivery group within their environment. Okay, let's look at the next major category. This is hybrid infrastructure. When we think of infrastructure, we think of the roads, the water systems, the electrical grids, and so forth of a city and so forth. In the case of an IT organization, infrastructure primarily the servers, the storage, and the network. The challenge is what is defined as infrastructure has gone up quite a bit now, and so we now see a lot of services that there's not server and storage, but are more API calls, and this has all become part of infrastructure, where we're calling predefined pieces of software, which are used for delivering infrastructure under API control. This is usually referred as infrastructure code. So what the definition of infrastructure is changing quite dramatically as we move into this systems integrator role. Now, a challenge is a lot of this IT infrastructure doesn't all come from a conventional IT source. It can still come from a traditional source or a private cloud, but a lot of it comes from a public cloud type of environment. The key thing with IT is that we now need to be able to integrate these services together using that one common portal, one common tool, but we need a variety of new orchestration tools that need to be introduced to be able to do that. It's got to tie into the portal, be able to provide services for micro cloud services, for private cloud services, for public cloud services, for infrastructure service, but it also has to support this new composable infrastructure using a unified API call to do infrastructure as a code. So these are all new infrastructure requirements. So a lot of changes involved in the hybrid infrastructure. They have to become an integrated supplier. They have to be able to provide unified management, be able to provide infrastructure as a code, and they have to be able to ensure that there's a good balance of value for cost. One of the key problems that happens when we have uncontrolled cloud services is that different business units keep over provisioning in their environment. So we tend to buy more infrastructure than we need. One of the big changes that we see here is to expand the role of the responsibility of the infrastructure groups, whether it's a server team or storage team or the networking team and so forth, to no longer just manage the server capacity inside their data center, but to manage the service capacity demands and expectations from all of the cloud providers for the corporation as a whole. That way we ensure that we always have enough supply, but we don't buy more than we need, and we're able to provide a much better value for cost model. So that kind of gives you a bit of a summary of the kind of things that you can expect to read in a shared responsibility model that we put together. As I mentioned, we described all 5 of of the major chunks of work, and we've gone through generally about 6 to 7 changes, recommendations in each one of those. We've only touched on a couple here to give you an idea. But in close, Tom, do you have a few things that you'd like to say just in closing?
Yes, thank you, Bill. It was an outstanding presentation about hybrid challenges. And I think it's an important opportunity that we look at ourselves from not just a business transformation, but an IT transformation as well. And as we see our roles beginning to change and our responsibilities shifting, new roles need to be identified and implemented as a way to support these new functions. And I think this is a great insight into how to move a company in that direction and to enable transformation. So thank you very much for your time. This has been a very insightful webinar. And for more information around this and other OACA papers and around the cloud maturity model, please go to the OACA website. Got more information. And thank you, Bill, for your time.
Thank you for your time as well.
Thanks.